If you've been struggling to lose belly fat over the past few years or even decades, and you're looking for a go-to form of cardio that can reliably and consistently get rid of that belly fat once and for all, then in this video we're gonna talk about which cardio is the ideal exercise for not only getting rid of that belly fat but keeping it off forever. Walking or running? Let's settle this debate once and for all. So if you've been watching any of my videos or have even glanced at any of the titles or any of my thumbnails up to this point, you can probably say that I know a thing or two about walking, daily walking, high volume daily walking. So you're probably going to think I'm going to be extremely biased and immediately pick walking, that it's just going to be a bloodbath between walking and running, especially as it pertains to fat loss. Well, as it turns out, before I committed myself to a daily routine of walking every single day, I was a runner back in my younger days. When I was in high school, I actually used to represent my high school at various competitions around cross country, and I even did some sprinting. In fact, I generally preferred sprinting over long distance endurance type of running because, even back then I had a small, skinny frame, short guy. So naturally running was a sport that I just gravitated towards, sprinting in particular. What I've noticed from those days as a runner was when I first started running, of course I was skinny, had very little muscle on me, and as soon as I got into the routine of running, and I had to kind of arrive to the high school super early before it even opened up, before even classes started. These are general training sessions as part of the cross country team. So when I got into long distance endurance running, I very quickly saw my physique transforming from, just a skinny guy, very little muscle, to extremely scrawny, emaciated guy. Yeah, I was surely getting some defined leg muscles at that time. I was still pretty young in my mid-teens, maybe 14, 15 years old at the time, but I started to get skinnier and skinnier. And of course, insanely tired after each of those sessions. Of course, I was trying my best, trying to stay hydrated, but walking, or running rather, was causing me to lose a lot of fat and muscle. So that's one of the biggest drawbacks of running, and one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to using running as your primary mechanism to lose weight. Sure, you're going to lose weight, you're going to lose a ton of weight, especially as a beginner to regular running. But running, unfortunately, causes you to lose both fat, muscle, and of course, water weight initially. So instead of getting a lean, athletic physique from running alone, you end up looking a lot more emaciated. You end up looking maybe more skeletal, like a skeleton on Halloween. And you even, at sometimes, develop a skinny fat physique, because if you lose out on a lot of muscle, and chances are you didn't have a lot of muscle to begin with, you get something called like an anterior pelvic tilt in your lower abdominal area. So it does look like you have a bit of a pooch belly there, despite the fact that you probably lost a ton of weight from running alone. So running, unfortunately, is not going to let you retain and hang on to your muscle mass. Walking, on the other hand, is a form of cardio, low intensity steady state cardio, or LISS for short, that preserves your muscle mass. Why is that? Because it's while you're walking consistently on a daily basis that your body prioritizes fat loss. So as opposed to running, where your body is relying on quick energy sources like carbohydrates, it's basically burning through carbs, and eventually it's burning through muscle in order for that so-called weight loss to take place. So that weight loss, you're seeing that registered as lots of fat being lost, but also lots of muscle being lost. As opposed to walking, very little, if any, muscle mass, as long as you're consistent in the gym and you're eating sufficient amounts of protein. And fat loss is prioritized over just water loss or muscle loss. So that is going to be the first way in which walking, in fact, this is where I'm going to assess a point to walking over running. So running, sure, overall is going to be awesome for weight loss, especially initial weight loss. But over the long term, that weight loss is going to make you lose out on a lot of essential muscle mass, which you're not going to get with walking. So now let's get into the second problem, or the second comparison rather. I want to be as unbiased as possible between walking and walking daily and running. When it comes to running is a high intensity form of cardio, so naturally it's going to spike your stress hormones, but it also raises another hormone. And this happens regardless if you're if you're a novice to running, or you've been running for several months or maybe years. It spikes your hunger hormones. So it spikes ghrelin, specifically your hunger hormone, and unfortunately that's going to cause a lot of folks who are new to running, daily running in particular, to start binge eating, aka eating in a calorie surplus. What happens when you eat in a calorie surplus? Well, naturally you're going to start to gain fat, right? 3,500 calories in a single week, basically in a 500 calorie surplus, will cause you on average to gain about a pound of fat a week. So if you continue that over a long term, instead of staying as lean as possible, you're just going to gain weight over time because those calories are going to start stacking up. So running as a high intensity form of cardio, by virtue of the fact that it spikes your cortisol and your hunger hormones, is going to also require a significant calorie expenditure by you. If you want to be a consistent long-term runner, you have to be prepared for the fact that you need to eat a lot more. You're going to have a much higher maintenance level, and you're going to have to be extremely disciplined. Very, very locked in on your diet and nutrition, because if this is an area of your fitness that you haven't previously paid attention to, diet and nutrition is what I'm referring to, then it's very easy to overeat while you're running. Now, I know there are track stars out there and some famous soccer stars like Erling Haaland, I believe his name is, the guy from Norway. I mean, these guys frequently, on a consistent basis, consume over 6,000, 6,500 calories a day. And these guys, as soccer players, are consistently running across a soccer pitch, right? Practice after practice after practice, and during those 90 to 100 minute games that they usually have. But guys like Haaland, guys like Messi, are extremely disciplined when it comes to their diet and nutrition. I'm gonna let this ambulance truck pass, obviously. Ambulance, fire truck. Yep. This is what happens when you take a walk and talk out here in public. But not everyone has the discipline of a Haaland or a Messi or a Ronaldo, right? The average Joe who takes up running solely as a way of burning fat is going to, unfortunately, give in to their deepest, darkest food cravings. They're going to not dial in, lock in on their diet and nutrition. Chances are they don't even have MyFitnessPal on their phones. So as a result, they're going to binge eat. They're going to eat in a calorie surplus. And ultimately, they're not going to be able to stay lean. So that belly fat is never ever going away, because that calorie surplus is something that it'll be very difficult for them to conquer. So That is a disadvantage of running. Walking, on the other hand, is not going to spike your cortisol, and it sure as hell is not going to spike your hunger hormones. You can go out for a long walk, and even if you go outside on a really hot and sunny day like today, the most that's ever going to happen to you is you come back from the walk and you're just going to be thirsty. All you have to do is just down a pint and a half of water, and you're good to go. After I come back from taping this walk and talk, I'm not going to want to run to the supermarket and grab myself a coconut cream pie or some shit like that. Nope. But if I ran all this time while taping this walk and talk, I might become famished. I might have, super high cortisol level, and I might just binge eat. So that is an advantage that walking has over running, that it doesn't spike your cortisol, and it sure as hell doesn't spike your hunger hormone. Let's talk about the long-term sustainability of walking versus running. Once again, we'll start off with running. Running long-term is excellent for maintaining your cardiovascular fitness. It's excellent for keeping your VO2 max, which is a maximum level of oxygen that is absorbed, consumed, essentially cycles throughout your cardiorespiratory system, keeping it sky high so that it's supporting basic respiration and supporting essential gas exchange, which happens at the alveoli at the ends of your lungs. So very essential for that. However, whether you're doing long distance endurance running or you're doing sprinting, like I was back in high school, it's going to take a toll on your body, specifically on your tendons and joints. There are a lot of runners out there, and we don't even have to go to established examples of famous runners who today aren't running at all, right? They've essentially retired from that sport. It just wasn't sustainable over the long term. A colleague of mine who I might have mentioned before on this channel, this guy was running every single morning, right? He was super regular when it came to running. He heard that I was walking every single day, hitting at that time over 22,000, 25,000 steps. So he was like, okay, you have a daily walking streak, I'll have a daily running streak, until it stopped. It stopped when he started sustaining random injuries. And this wasn't while he was running. This was when he kind of came back. He was trying to rest and recover. But again, he was just going full tilt day after day, every single day. He got a hip injury. He sustained a knee injury at one point, put him out of commission for a couple of days. And then, as a result of that, he started to take a break from those daily running sessions. Those injuries started piling up. And then when those injuries piled up, he was already in a chronically stressed out state, right? His cortisol levels are already probably jacked up from all of the daily running that he was doing. And his ghrelin, his hunger hormone, was also significantly elevated. As a result, this guy, who was probably maybe about 150, 160 pounds for his height, I think he's a little taller than I am. It's hard to tell because he doesn't have a strand of hair on his head. But I think he's around my height or a little taller than me. So 150 pounds is still, at that time was pretty good for him. Pretty solid, healthy BMI or body mass index. He started binge eating. This man went from 150 pounds to well over 350 pounds, even to 400 pounds, while recovering from all of the injuries he sustained from daily running. Again, your average Joe, literally his name is Joe, he got injured from running. He succumbed to binge eating, went up to as high as 400 pounds, and had to have bariatric surgery just to combat all of the massive weight gain that he had experienced in just a short amount of time. So this is just one example of, I'm sure, numerous examples of the toll, of the physical toll that running takes on your body. one of the many reasons why running is not sustainable over the long term. Walking, on the other hand, you can scale it indefinitely over time. And it's an activity that, regardless of your age or experience level, you can take up. I'm sure there are many of you guys commenting on my videos, watching my videos. You have maybe been walking for years, for decades, or you just recently took it up as a pastime, as a hobby, and you're finding it to be very enjoyable, but most importantly, very easy to carry out, right? And you're very easily scaling up those steps, maybe through a combination of indoor walks, outdoor walks, right? Short walks, long walks. It doesn't matter. It's very versatile, number one, very easy to conduct, right? You can do it anywhere, very accessible. Most of my walks, in fact, I carry out indoors, right? I'm a hybrid worker. I got to work from home 4 days a week. So when I'm at home, I'm just walking around in circles at home. When I had a functional walking treadmill, I would just be on that joint while I was completing my work tasks, emails, Slacks, what have you, just walking away at 2.5 speed, 0 incline, by the way. So walking, definitely way more accessible, easier to carry out, and once again, you can progressively overload on your steps over time. What I'm currently doing is I'm trying to add about 1,000 to 2,000 steps every single month through daily walking alone. So I'm currently on, I think, a 36-day streak, if I'm not mistaken. I think I hit 35 consecutive days of walking over 30 steps. Now, my average over the past week has been well over 35,000 steps. So you can see, for a very long time, for over a year, I could barely make it past 25,000 steps. Frankly, I wasn't, exerting myself too much. But now, very easily, because of that tolerance, because of that experience level that I've built up through daily walking, I'm easily pushing past 35,000, 36,000. Heck, I've even had a couple 37,000 step days. So, more scalable, way easier, and accessible to all. That's a big advantage of walking over running. So yeah, I'm not really keeping score here, but right now, walking is indeed kicking running's ass. So now let's look at another criteria that I can use to assess and compare walking versus running. What happens at mealtime? If you truly want to stay lean year-round, you want to deal with insulin sensitivity, and you want to make sure that you're promoting proper digestion after each meal. Walking is an activity that anyone can participate in after meals, and in my case, even during meals. What happens is, if you eat a meal, regardless of its macro content, all you have to do is just go for a 10-minute walk after that meal, right? Eat a meal for 15-20 minutes at work, at home, out and about at a theme park, whatever. Maybe you're on a beautiful Friday afternoon like today, and you've just finished lunch. Just go out for a 10-minute walk. That's it, 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, you significantly boost your insulin sensitivity, and you significantly aid your overall absorption. Insulin sensitivity, why is that so important? Because at the end of the day, we want to significantly reduce our risk for contracting diabetes in our lifetime. Diabetes, unfortunately, is one of those heinous chronic diseases that's contained within metabolic syndrome. That is, especially type 2 diabetes, is almost 100% due to having excess weight. It's a disease of obesity. People, unfortunately, who are overweight, who are over a healthy BMI, are at the greatest risk for developing diabetes, because these folks have increased insulin resistance. So if we want to decrease insulin resistance and increase insulin sensitivity, we want to make sure that all that glucose that's present in our bloodstream after a meal gets immediately acted upon by insulin, and it gets shuttled almost instantaneously into our cells. We want to make sure that we're walking after the meals in order to boost our insulin sensitivity. And that can also be aided by eating certain meals that are on the low carb side or on the low glycemic index side, like avocados, for example, which are a healthy source of fats, right? Monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. So there are certain foods that we can certainly eat to help push us in the right direction when it comes to insulin sensitivity. But in general, walking does wonders regardless of the diet that you consume on a daily basis. Hopefully, that's a diet that's primarily comprised of single ingredient whole foods. Finally, fat loss takes forever. Fat loss is an extremely, excruciatingly slow process. Don't believe those videos that promise six-pack abs in 3 months or by the end of the summer. Fat loss is not a year-round journey. It's a lifelong journey. It requires a lifelong commitment to healthy eating habits, healthy exercise habits, and healthy activity habits like daily walking, for example. Since fat loss takes such a long time to ultimately achieve and maintain forever, you need to address it using a long-term sustainable form of exercise. That's where walking comes in. Walking is an exercise, low intensity, steady state cardio that is not going to take a physical toll on your body. It's not going to spike hormones like cortisol or ghrelin, for example. It's going to keep your leptin, your hormone of satiety, extremely level. So it's not going to make you hungry after a meal. It's going to actually keep you full between meals. And walking is going to support long-term sustainable fat loss. People who are able to be lean year-round without resorting to extra medications like these peptides, all these people are doing are committing themselves to a daily regimen of high volume daily walking, at least over 20,000 steps. So if fat loss is a process that takes a hell of a long time, then you need to address it, you need to attack it head on using daily walking, because daily walking is something that you can do for life. You will never retire from daily walking. If anything, most people retire to daily walking. And you can see the results for yourself. You can actually see evidence of that for yourself. Just check out all the folks that have commented on videos on my channel, as well as videos on other channels that are devoted and dedicated to daily walking, where people report how much they have benefited from walking. Fat loss benefits galore, but also there are a whole wealth of benefits that you get from walking, and by consistently scaling up your daily walking over time. Increase mental clarity, for one thing. Reduce stress, it's another thing. It's also going to significantly decrease your dementia risk. That's something that I'll talk about in a future video. But in general, walking, if you want to pick one form of cardiovascular exercise which is the most efficient for fat loss, especially for belly fat, which, another thing, belly fat is going to be the last form of fat, a body fat, specifically subcutaneous fat and visceral fat, to leave your body. Most people store their fat around their bellies as well as in their back, in their lower back and their love handles. And that's usually the last place for fat to disappear from your body. So you need to be extremely patient, and you need to make use of an exercise that rewards you for patience and that rewards you for progressively overloading over time. And that's high volume daily walking. Just walk, baby.